this video, we're going to add a couple of custom outputs to our model, and we're going to look at how to present and share our visualizations and our model as a whole. If we look at our outputs, we can see that our ARR here is automatically calculated for us, and 732K, it's approaching 1 million, not bad. Growth and churn calculations, our customer LTV and our customer acquisition costs and our customer acquisition payback period are also all super helpful calculations that we have and outputs that we have. So we want to add two more outputs, one for profit and one for cash flow. So I'll create a new variable called profit. And this is going to be our revenue for any given month. So we'll type in revenue. So our revenues here from revenues and expenses minus our total expenses for the same month. And if we look up at the top, we can see that those are exactly the numbers that we want to be working with. So revenues minus expenses, that's going to give us our profit. And next we're going to add another variable, and we'll call this cash flow. And here, we're actually going to go back up to the top into our inputs, and we're going to create a new variable called seed funding. So I'll click enter, and I'm just going to right click and make this its own group, and we're going to call this our investments group. So under our investments, we have one variable for seed funding. And when we click that seed funding variable, we can add a hard-coded amount here or a calculation. For us, our seed funding is going to reflect a one-time capital infusion from co-founder savings. So we'll put in 15K in here. And we just need to make sure that that is a currency. So we have $15,000 in seed funding from our co-founders. So that's our investment. And now if we go back down to our outputs and we have our cash flow variable, we can see that what we'll want to do here is we'll want to include that initial investment as part of our cash flow. So our cash flow is going to be our investments, our seed funding, plus our revenue for any given month minus our total expenses. And that should give us our cash flow. And again, we can see what's happening here. So we have our revenues, our expenses, and our seed funding all being taken into account for this output. Great. So now that we have all of our outputs, we can now work on our visualizations. So let's click Show Visuals here, and we can see what we have been given as our defaults. So we have a subscribers chart, and for our subscribers chart, we can see the chart type is a time series. So if I click on that chart, I can see here chart type is a time series. We could adjust it to a table if we needed to, and then we would just have the table and all of the data here listed each month for each of our subscriber categories, new subscribers, renewed or churned. And we can head back into time series because we'd like to keep it as this visual, but just to show the different options here. And instead of a line, we could also switch it to a bar if that were easier or more easy to read for any given chart, we can switch between the toggle, or we can switch between the line and bar subtype. So we'll keep this as a line for now. And the other thing to point out is that we can also see that our uncertainty interval is set to 80%, which we can adjust here if we needed to. So we could make it 90, 95, but 80 is that default percentage. And there's more in the causal documentation about the uncertainty interval if you'd like to read up on that. In terms of our other charts here, let's just make this a little bit wider. We can see that we have our MRR movements here as another visualization, and it's great. I don't think we need to have this MRR build table, so we can click on the little gear icon here and delete that chart. And this is just deleting the visual. It's not deleting any of the data or anything like that. We'll keep our revenues and marketing spend, and again, we're going to get rid of the table here and just stick more with our visuals. We can keep our growth and churn rates and our MRR and subscribers table, our net MRR growth rate, and we can delete this description here. So we can delete that. We won't need that in our visualization, but in terms of the general description that we have once we open up the model, we can edit that. Under our advanced options here. So we're in general, advanced, and presentation mode, and our model description is written right here. So instead of saying this is a forecasting model for a SaaS business, we can say this is a forecasting model for the Acme SaaS company. And then that way, anytime anybody enters into our model, they'll see exactly which business and company it's for, and we could also delete anything if we needed to, or add anything to this description as needed. So that description is loaded up, and we can just click out to save. I'll double check. Yep, everything's saved there. Great, so we have our net MRR growth rate there as a chart as well. And if we click into our output cards for our profit and cash flow, so I'm just going to click into our profit card and right click, and we will create a chart for our profit. And so now that chart's been added, and similarly for our cash flow, we can click into that card, right click, and create a chart for our cash flow. I'm going to get rid of one other graphic here, this growth, churn rates, MRR, and subscribers. It's a little bit redundant based on the charts we have above, so we're going to delete that one too. And then we're just going to keep now everything that we have here. We have lots of visuals to show our model at different levels. Awesome. So it looks like we have all of our charts, we have all of our inputs, our calculations, and our outputs. So now our model is ready to view. We can click this play icon here in the top right corner, and that should help us enter into our model. We can see here that the model description shows that change that we made in the editing mode for our model description. Now we can see it says the Acme SaaS company, and we can enter into our model. So this looks very similar to what we showed in the first video of our finished model for our Acme SaaS business. And it looks like everything is there. And in terms of our charts, we can see all of those visuals. Our larger chart here spans the full width, which is really great for our revenues and marketing spend. And then we can see the two charts that we added, our profit and our cash flow, are listed there in our chart section as well. So lots of great visuals. And we can also edit our assumptions. So for instance, what happens if we get a bit of pre-launch buzz, and instead of our 10 to 20 subscribers at the beginning of the first month, we have maybe 50 to 100. So I'll enter that in and click enter. We can see that big jump has happened. And now if we look at our profits and cash flows, everything's been adjusted accordingly. And we are looking at our revenues and marketing spend. Revenues jumped up quite a bit with that adjustment as well. I think we're going to go back into our model here and we're going to add one more chart. So let's reset this and let's add in a chart for our ARR. Doesn't seem to be represented. There we go. So we have our ARR now. It shows our 738K as that potential average ARR, with the upper range being 1.2 million and the lower range being 412,000. And so now let's go back into our model and we can see what those assumptions and adjustments will do to our ARR as well. So really easy to add a chart into our model and see what's going on at any level and adjust as needed. So we'll go back in here, add our 50 to 100 subscribers at the beginning of the month. And now let's see what that's done to our ARR. Awesome. So decent jump there. Our bottom line ARR has gone up a little bit. We can see that it's affected our cash flows and our ARR. So this might actually be growing maybe a little bit too fast. What if we also have, instead of 10 to 20 new subscribers at the first month, we add 20 to 30? So that helps with our cash flow and with our ARR. That's quite the jump, actually, in the difference between adding 10 to 20 subscribers versus 20 to 30 in our first month. Now the upper range of our ARR is bordering on 4 million, and our average is in the millions in and of itself. And our cash flow is looking a lot better. So just adding all those new subscribers at the beginning, unless we add more new subscribers within that first month, could be an issue for our cash flow, but maybe we wouldn't know that without this model and being able to adjust for those assumptions. So we could also go in at any time and adjust the start dates or salaries for any of our employees. So maybe we want our sales director to start sooner, and we want to figure out if that would be feasible. So let's see, we'll select our sales director here from the drop-down of our employee start date. And instead of January 2023, let's click in and we'll have that sales director start a little bit sooner in August of 2022. So it's going to adjust our cash flow a little bit, but it looks like we should still be okay. And that should be fine to add that person a little bit sooner based on all of our other assumptions of our new subscribers, our growth, and our churn. And because they're starting earlier, let's anticipate that they have a positive impact on our growth rate. So now let's adjust our growth rate here to, instead of 10 to 20%, maybe just adding that sales director a couple months sooner, we'll adjust this to 15 to 23%. And we can see now that we've added more subscribers month over month. Our MRR is also going up month over month. And if we head back down to our cash flows and our ARR and our profits, everything is being impacted by hiring that person a little bit sooner. So big improvement to our top end and a positive impact pretty well all around to bring that sales director in sooner if we can afford to. So at any time, you can save changes to the model with the new assumptions. So save changes to the model. So now if we went back into our model and clicked edit model, those assumptions are now reflected in our cards here because we saved them. So our growth rate now is 15 to 23% instead of that 10 to 20. If we didn't want to save any of those assumptions when we enter back into our model, if we make any adjustments here, so if we wanted to bring that growth rate back down to 10 to 20%, right, then we wouldn't click Save Changes, but we could always reset the inputs, right? So now it's gone back up to 15 to 20%. So you can save the changes and the assumptions that you make, or you can reset to what was already in the model at any time. To share your model, you can always copy the link and you'll be able to share it with your team or potential investors. Or if you click Edit Model and we're taken back into the editor, you can adjust anything that you need in the card view, adjust any of your assumptions, and then share the model after you've made those adjustments or added any charts and edited as needed. And of course, on the Pro plan, you can always connect Causal directly to other services such as Stripe or QuickBooks or another data source. So if we click into data here, this is where you can create new data sources, and on that Pro plan, you can connect any of these native integrations that are built into Causal to have your data automatically be piped in and updated and working with your actual numbers to predict the future. Congrats to the team at Causal for building such an awesome product. It still blows my mind every time I use it. And congrats to you for building your first financial model with Causal. We can't wait to see what you build next.